questions of city officials in the panel. Okay, members of council, I do have a motion, if we can put that on the screen. No? Okay, I'll just read the script, okay. The city manager has requested that Professor Eric Miller, the spokesperson for the expert advisory panel, be permitted to answer questions via video conference. Professor Miller is currently attending a conference in Peru, but is available for questions until noon this morning. As this arrangement is unusual, I wish to put the question to council whether it wishes to ask questions of Professor Miller in this way. Members should also be aware that the video conference technology may result in a slight time delay in Professor Miller receiving and answering members' questions. Okay? Point of order, Councilman Wong.
Yes, I'm just wondering what the procedural bylaw says about receiving this type of deputation or allowing for questions. I also, Madam Chair, within that context, would like to understand if we decide to do this in future, will we be getting, will we be having teleconferences for individuals that can't attend council meetings, because we would then be setting a precedent by taking this decision today.
Okay, if I can have the staff.
It's an important consideration for this council as we go forward.
Madam Speaker, there is no particular provision in the procedure bylaw, which is why we've put the motion to council through you, that allows for this kind of video conferencing. However, I would remind council that in this case and in the particular provisions of the bylaw, because the expert panel stands in the place of a city official on this matter, they are in fact the writers of the report and so should be answering the questions with respect to the report. And Mr. Miller has been, or Professor Miller has been appointed by the panel as the spokesperson. So it is entirely up to council.
Okay,
sorry, I just want to address the issue of members' participation. That is not currently permitted in the bylaw. It is allowed under quota, but it needs a bylaw to be passed, and it has not been placed in our procedure bylaw at this time. The law also does not allow voting to occur over distance. So if the participant is not in the room, obviously they can't vote. That applies to members.
Councilman Wong.
So you're saying that, so the vote would be, Madam Chair, it was a simple majority vote because the procedural bylaw is silent on this?
No, it requires a majority vote in this case only because they stand in the place, the expert panel stands in the place of a city official.
So, Madam Chair, just on the same point of order, therefore, this council could actually, in the future, hear anyone who wants to be questioned by this council through video conferencing? I just need to know what the implications are for this council in the future, because this is the first time that we've done this.
Yes, this is the first time.
Madam Speaker, our recommendation is that this be a one-off issue and that if it ever were to arise again in the future, we would have to address it through bylaw. This should not be considered as setting any kind of precedent. It is a one-off circumstance.
So, Madam Chair, just on the same point of order, if this is an exception, if this is a one-off exception, then I would say that you'd have to consider that as maybe as precedent setting, that maybe we would need 2/3. I don't know. I'm very troubled by us changing for this special meeting the procedures. We are changing the procedures, and the fact that the clerk has said this should only be one-off is equally troubling.
Well, this was just presented to me this morning, last minute. So I have the city manager has asked for this. So we need to vote on it. And so I guess the question to the clerk is, would it require 2/3? No? No 2/3?
Again, because the panel stands as in the place of a city official. They have the right to answer questions. The only issue before council is whether they wish to allow Professor Miller to participate by teleconference.
Councillor Kelly?
Speaker, I'm fully supportive of that motion. I think we should have him here so we can ask questions of him. And if you can use an innovative way of doing that, I'm all for it. And I want to say as well that I'll be bringing a motion to ask for your support to have another expert available today for questions as well. And I'll propose that after this vote.
An expert appointed by council?
Okay. Now I see, okay, just one sec. Okay. I see I have members of council that have their names up, request to speak. Is that, your names are up there to speak on the item? Is that the case? Is that the case? Yes. Councillor De Grande? Yeah, okay. All right, so you have a point of, just a sec. Point of privilege, Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I'm hearing that this is being requested because this Dr. Miller is the chair of the expert panel that was established by City Council. Is that correct? That's
Yes.
the basis of this request to Council?
Yes.
And it's a recommendation to Council?
Yes, I have it. We will be voting on it, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, as,
Point
okay.
of order.
Councillor Shiner?
I don't have the memorandum or the request that you have, but my understanding is it's based on the fact that the panel requested, or the chair to speak, but there's many members of the panel. There's a vice chair, and there's others that could have spoken. So I don't understand why the ruling is, or the motion is, that only because this one individual is asked, that they have to be permitted. And the second point of order is, if a senior staff like the city manager is out of town at a future meeting, and we need questions of him, and he's the one that can answer it, then will we be able to bring that motion to the floor of council and have the city manager also respond to us by video conference?
Okay, this is the first time, and this was just presented to me. This, if I can ask the city manager, since you gave me this motion, maybe you can comment on it. And then, Councillor Lindsay Luby, I'll get your point of order in a minute.
Through you, Madam Speaker, I believe the clerk did outline the purpose of this exception. I do believe, from a staff perspective, that this is an exception, and it's an exception because of the setup of this special council meeting, with it being a panel report that I am simply transmitting to you as a council. The panel chose Professor Miller as their key representative, and they asked that I accommodate as best I could technology-wise, because he was planning on being here this past week when we were tentatively looking at March 15th, but he couldn't make it last week. And so basically he had a scheduling problem. Given the request of the panel, I thought it was appropriate to ask council for this indulgence. I fully appreciate this is an exception, and I believe it is an exception because of the difference in this report and compared to other staff reports, and because of the importance of the issue as well.
Councillor Lindsay Luby.
Thank you. This is my point of order. Having worked on the previous procedural bylaw, I'm not surprised that the clerk has told us that the current bylaw is silent on this particular issue. And so I propose that the city clerk, together with a small working committee of councillors and yourself, of course, sit down and look at how anything in the future can be accommodated. I am not prepared, however.
Okay, it's not in order, Councillor.
Well, no, but this is something for you to think about.
No, I know, and that's something, and we are thinking about it, actually.
And I also am not prepared to support any other individual that, say, Councillor Kelly might bring forward to do the same thing. That is not anticipated. It is not suggested by the city manager, and I think we should just leave it at this one individual. Thank you.
Councillor Cho, do you have a point of order?
I don't know if it's a point of order or point of privilege, but
Councillor Cho, we're trying to get through a vote here. Is it point of order or point of personal privilege?
okay.
Is it pertaining to this item?
Okay, it's a point of privilege.
Yes.
We live in the age of electronic, and we try to get as much factual information as possible. So I don't understand why we should even debate. We get the facts.
Councillor Cho, that's not a point. Your members of council are abusing points of privilege and points of order. And maybe everyone should get a copy of the procedure bylaw so we can all review it, because I don't think we understand it. Okay. That's it. So we have the motion before us. I will be asking for a recorded vote.
Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Del Grande.
Councillor Palacio, please. Councillor Crisanti and Councillor Palacio, please. May we have your votes?
The motion carries 34-6.
Okay, we will now proceed to questions of city officials in the panel. Councillor Kelly?
Sorry, Speaker, that this wasn't brought to your attention earlier. But my motion, Speaker, is that members of council be permitted to ask questions of Dr. Joe Kennelly, Toronto Transit Infrastructure Limited, during the question period. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a legacy issue. This is a debate that will determine not only the transit future of the City of Toronto, but our economic future as well, because the two are inextricably combined. I want a fair, honest debate, and I think that if you only have one source of information, that you may not have all the information, all the facts in front of you. And I want to give you that opportunity. I want this to be a level playing field. So please, and I'm pleading with you, I need two-thirds support, frankly, for this.
Before us, two-thirds. No, it's not out of order. Deputy Mayor Holliday, do you have a question?
I discussed this.
It's not out. Councillor Kelly, it is in order. Deputy Mayor Holliday.
My question simply is this: what are the credentials of this individual?
She did the.
Okay, just one sec. She
did the research that lies behind the report, Toronto Transit Back on Track. She was an employee of the Toronto Transit Infrastructure Limited, a subsidiary of the TTC, a City of Toronto agency.
Okay, we have the vote before us, recorded vote. We need two-thirds vote.
The required two-thirds to waive the procedure bylaw does not carry. The vote is 25-15.
Okay, questions. If members of council have questions. We don't have, after that long debate, nobody has questions. If we were going to allow someone to answer questions, and now nobody wants to ask questions. Councillor Fragadakis.
Is Dr. Miller Skyped in, or?
I don't know. Dr. Miller, are you there?
Oh, wow, okay. Can you hear me? All right, I have a question. I have a couple of questions, and it relates to page 47 of the report, and it's figure 10, Scarborough North of 401, Planning District 16. What are the boundaries of District 16?
The boundaries are shown in the map in the dark line. So it's essentially Victoria Park, Steeles Avenue, the eastern boundary of Scarborough, and more or less the 401. So it's Planning District 16 is shown with the dark lines in the map.
Okay, great. Dr. Miller, what are the neighborhoods within District 16?
I don't have all the names of all the neighborhoods before me.
Okay. So why is the LRT better for those living in District 16 and taking short trips?
Well, because the LRT runs the length of Sheppard Avenue, people will be able to get on and off it along that line. Obviously, people living beyond walking distance of Sheppard Avenue will need to take a bus southbound generally to it, so a one-transfer trip. So the LRT provides transportation throughout the east-west corridor. Eventually, that could become complemented with something higher order along Finch Avenue as well. But bus connections and/or driving down to Sheppard Avenue would provide connectivity more or less throughout Planning District 16.
Okay, thank you. And for those 15% that travel south, would a subway on Sheppard make their life any better?
Possibly those in the very western part of Planning District 16, but since the Sheppard Avenue subway dips southeast to Scarborough City Centre, it really doesn't serve very much of Planning District 16 when all is said and done.
Great, so their life won't be improved. Okay, on page 34 of the report, and it relates to the figure 9 on page 35. Towards the bottom of the page, it says, under this CVA uplift model, the property taxation system would be modified so that it could capture a portion of the overall growth in property values assessed by MPAC and convert this into tax revenue that could be collected by the province and directed to Metrolinx. My question is, what is the impact of a CVA uplift tax on seniors living in their homes?
Well, I mean, anytime you increase property taxes for people on fixed income, there is a negative impact.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miller.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Some have told people in Scarborough and elsewhere that subways are always better than LRTs. If that's true, if subways are always better than LRTs, why is the panel not recommending subways? Why would you recommend an LRT?
Well, there's no such thing as a category always better. There's very few things in life that are always better regardless of context. One has to look at the context within which you're making the decision. In the proper context, subways are better. In other contexts, LRT is often better. Subways require high volumes of traffic in order to justify their high expense. LRT is better suited to the land use patterns in Scarborough, lower density, and without the lack of concentration, it's going to generate the ridership necessary to justify the investment in the subway.
But may I ask?
LRT is a better solution, by and large, for the area in Scarborough being served. It'll provide high-quality service. and is better suited both in terms of cost and delivery mechanism than the subway. LRT, there's been a lot of misinformation about LRT. LRT is providing a very high quality of service to these people much more cost effectively.
Now, some have said, though, to people in Scarborough and across the city that we're only building for today, that we're not thinking of tomorrow, we're not being proactive and planning ahead. Will an LRT be adequate for future planning for Scarborough?
Yes, it will be. I mean, we've looked at both the ridership projections and the capacity of the system. The capacity will meet the needs of today and the needs of tomorrow. The LRT is a city-building investment as well as the subway is. They invest differently. The subway, if built, may well promote development at a few nodes around the stations. The LRT has the potential of promoting evolution of the Sheppard Avenue corridor in a way that will have long-term sustainability, and again, by providing a route all along Sheppard Avenue, it provides a backbone for building transit throughout northern Scarborough that we can add on to, that will build for the future. We have to be looking towards developing an urban form that supports transit and provides alternatives to the car, particularly as we move into the future of high gasoline prices and so forth. The LRT provides that opportunity to look into the future and build a community, a neighborhood throughout Scarborough, an urban form that will be more sustainable in the long run.
Well, obviously, there's been some misinformation out there. Some have said to people in Scarborough and elsewhere in the city that we live in Canada. We have winter. Well, on normal years we have winter, and that we shouldn't make people stand outside to wait for transit. That's inhumane. Isn't every subway platform in Toronto underground? I mean, how can we allow anyone to wait outside when it's cold?
Well, not all subway stations can sometimes be above ground, and certainly some of the subway stations are not heated, and they can get quite cold in the wintertime. I think more to the point, LRT operates very nicely in cold weather climates throughout the world, including Canada and including the United States. It's everybody's judgment, but I don't think winter weather is an impediment. We stand outside for buses, we stand outside for streetcars, we can stand outside for LRT. One of the key things I think to recognize is the LRT is going to be operating at very, very high frequencies, very reliably, so you won't have to, except under very unusual circumstances, you won't have to be standing there very, very long.
My final question for you, sir.
This is largely a false issue.
Councillor Ballo, he can't hear you.
I appreciate it. My final question for you, sir. Have you seen a substantive, realistic funding plan to build a subway on Sheppard yet?
No, I haven't, and I think our report is very clear. The section on financial considerations is I think, very clear on the options, the issues, and the shortfall. There is no literally, there's not a plan in place for completely funding the subway at this point in time. There are many good suggestions about how we might fund this, but they're not in place at this point in time, and there are serious issues about putting that funding process in place. I think funding of transit, the long-term funding of transit, both the capital investment and the operating and maintenance in the long run, is a very serious issue that we have to take into consideration. And so solving these long-term funding opportunities is something that we have to come to grips with.
Okay, thank you. We have the next question. Councillors only have 5 minutes.
Sorry.
Councillor Cho.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, Dr. Miller.
Good morning.
Yeah. Thank you so much for helping City of Toronto, especially all the residents of City of Toronto. My name is Raymond Cho. I'm City Councillor representing Scarborough Rouge River, which includes the Melbourne area. Now, according to the statistics I received, in 1983, it was projected the employment in Scarborough Center would reach 65,000. And today, Scarborough Center has only created 13,700. Now, by bringing Mayor's Plan Subway to City Scarborough Center, and by bringing LRT and that extend to Melbourne, do you have any figures of what kind of jobs will created?
Sorry, I missed my apologies. I missed the last part of your question. Could you please repeat it?
Okay, I'll make it simpler. If we bring a subway to Scarborough Town Center, how many more jobs will be created in 10 years' time, the way things are going? We have a projection earlier in 1983, the jobs will be created 65,000. Today is only 13,700. So as Mayor said, if we bring a subway, the jobs will create it.
Okay. Clearly, today Scarborough City Centre has underperformed relative to previous projections. What might happen if we build a subway is difficult to determine. We have projections and report, but they're not timed out in terms of 10, 20 years. It's a very long-term projection from Barry Lyon that I think, which probably could be viewed as an ultimate build-out, and we have those numbers before you. Whether that actually happens, is anybody's guess. It would require proactive work on the part of the city to promote that. I think one should also note that in any proposal such as this, the net new growth to the city versus just a redistribution of where that construction or those jobs might have gone otherwise is something that's very difficult to determine. So net new growth is something that's very difficult to ascertain.
Oh, thank you. The next question, Dr. Miller. See, a lot of people assume that when we build subways, everybody will come into subway abandoning their cars. But in reality, when I drive Yonge and Finch rush hour, that whole area, underground subway is there for years, but above ground is like a parking lot. Especially today, we have so many hybrids and electronic cars and small cars. People, they don't want to abandon their cars. So if we build a subway, say Sheppard, you think the people will just give up their cars and all come to this subway? That's one question. And when we build the subway, nobody talks about the building parking lots. So can you answer that question?
Okay, well, in terms of park and ride, I think, in fact, that's part of any rail transit is to provide parking facilities and allow people to drive partway to the facility rather than having to drive all the way. So I think actually on balance, it's better to have people driving shorter distances than longer distances. I think if we build the LRT, we want to think about those options as well. Certainly, though, I think the point of transit is to try to get people on cars as much as possible.
Okay, the third question is, Mayor's plan is let's build subway, money will come. Is it good plan or is it better to have a capital budget? Say we have $5 billion from federal government, another $4 billion from provincial, maybe city creates $1 billion. So if we have a plan and actually have a 50% of a capital budget, then we start building subway. Which is a better plan?
Well, I think if I understand your question correctly, and I am having a little difficulty hearing, I think even though we're focusing on Sheppard Avenue today, one has to keep a view on the bigger picture that we have a major capital funding challenge facing us for the city as a whole. And so we have to be very careful that any dollars we decide to spend today on Sheppard Avenue are effective, and that we have to be making sure that we have capital budgeting room regardless of funding opportunities to build other things, other transit lines in the city, including other lines in Scarborough.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Lindsay Luby.
Thank you. Dr. Miller, a couple of questions, if I may. I was very concerned to read in your report about the failure of population projections. And, you know, of course, as Councillor Cho just alluded to, build it and they will come, but nobody came. So do you have any understanding of why nobody came?
Sorry, understanding of why the population...
Why the projections
failed?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's very easy to overestimate the impacts of transit investment if it's not tied to market fundamentals and not tied to proactive government facilitating and working with the private sector to invest. Clearly, over the past 20 years, Scarborough City Centre has not attracted private sector, and there hasn't been the public sector support for it. Whether that would change in the future remains to be seen. While we're planning for the future, we do have to be careful to be realistic in our projections of what the potential uptake might be in these locations.
Well,
to simply say build it and they will come is not true. You have to make it happen, and that's demonstrated around.
And if I can interrupt here, you have to make it happen. So then we're relying on developers who have an eye on the market, who understand the market, who understand what's possible and the future as well. And yet, when they were consulted, they said, no, we don't want any development charges to pay for this. So that tells me that they can look ahead and say, this is not a place where the market is going to go. Would that be fair?
That's certainly a reasonable judgment. I mean, there are clearly people who would argue otherwise, but I do think we have to be prudent about that. It's certainly, I think it is true to say the developers haven't come forward yet to put money on the table with respect to this.
Okay. And finally, in your report on page 53 at the bottom, you said a key consideration with respect to building subways is to understand whether there will be community acceptance of local intensification. So even if this were built, and even if the developer said, yes, we're going to, put up a 50-story building here in order to have the density of population to make it happen, do you think the public will be accepting of that kind of change in the suburbs?
Well, this is a very good question, and again, we can see that at North York City Centre, for example, although some high-rise buildings have been put up, they are one block deep, and there has been significant resistance to expand beyond that. If a place like Scarborough wants to build a subway such as Sheppard Avenue, they're going to have to accept much higher density to begin to justify the investment. Certainly, evidence to date indicates that's not the current case. Whether that could change in the future is anybody's guess.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Councillor Palacio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Dr. Miller, this is Councillor Palacio. I have a couple of questions. Would you agree that a subway system are faster, reliable, safer, in terms of longevity, it lasts longer, in terms of operating savings in the long term, that will also save money. And also that the Sheppard Subway plan is not a new idea. It's been an approved public policy since 1986. It has involved decades of research, analysis, and planning by the TTC and also the city. And for decades, the official plan has envisioned a rapid transit connection between the major city centers like Scarborough, North York, and Toronto. So my question to you is, why didn't the panel consider as an option the subway system as well in your report and make recommendations so this council can have an option in terms of looking at what's better in terms of leaving a good legacy for the future, for future generations?
Okay, sorry, I didn't, your question broke up a little bit, so I don't think I caught it all. I will try to answer the parts. Something, in terms of speed, we've heard a lot about speed on subways. Yes, subways are faster station to station, but what matters is door-to-door travel time. And LRT with closer stop spacings brings more people within easy walking distance of stations. And so the overall travel time, I mean, if you actually look at how long it takes you, very long distance, the fastest speed is not overly critical. So the door-to-door travel times tend to be much more comparable. In terms of and reliability, I would argue, is very, very similar between the two, the way that the LRT will be delivered. So that's not really a deciding factor. In terms of city building, again, building Scarborough City Center in particular, as the current travel patterns show and projections that those patterns being maintained show, actually connectivity of Scarborough City Center to the downtown is more critical than connecting it to North York City Center. And so I think that, to me, is the bigger issue. Also, again, if one looks at travel patterns within Scarborough, it seems to me a better strategy is to build Scarborough City Center as a major node and destination within Scarborough and to be centering transit around Scarborough City Center. The subway connection to North York City Center actually doesn't do very much in that regard. The Sheppard LRT provides a good first step towards, again, starting to build a network that could, in fact, provide better connectivity throughout Scarborough and hence hopefully promote development at Scarborough City Center as well.
Thank you. I do have another question. In 2004, as head of the U of T, you led the modeling and assessment for the traffic impact on the St. Clair exclusive right-of-way. We visited your lab and asked questions on the computer simulation model that you presented. And some of the questions that were asked at that moment is, it had to do with the small detail. And now, as you know, the exclusive right-of-way, in sections of it, especially west of Old Western Road, we have a tremendous congestion, gridlock, environmental impacts on the local community, traffic infiltration, and the tremendous economic loss to local communities. How do you justify your computer simulation model to the nightmare on the exclusive right-of-way on St. Clair, and how that will perhaps also impact the proposed LRT on Sheppard Avenue?
Sorry, again, I am unfortunately having difficulty hearing the question. My understanding is you're referring to previous reports of computer simulation models showing future congestion, very high emissions, and so forth. Is that correct, first of all?
Yes, and I did attend your lab, and we asked those very questions to you at that point, and that's part of my questioning at the moment. How do you justify that?
Yeah.
A different future than that catastrophic one of global congestion. Both proposals will contribute towards that. The question is which builds in the longer run a contribution to a network that will address that issue. The panel views the LRT having longer run, better network connectivity potential to build a network for the city that will eventually help to reduce congestion.
Hi. Okay. Councilor Palazzi, I don't think he answered your question. No, he didn't. I don't know if he heard it or he understood it. Councilor Mammoliti?
Doctor, thanks for answering some of our questions. My first question to you is, did the panel take into consideration the voice of communities and what weight they would hold with respect to what they might want in their communities?
Well, we're certainly cognizant of community opinion, but I think there's a fair bit of evidence to indicate that community opinion is not well formed or well informed on many of the actual issues. We have to look at the evidence in terms of what the expected ridership in those communities will be, and how to best deliver transit to those communities. And so certainly community opinion is of importance, but it also has to stand up to the facts of the case.
How does, and I'll get to this, the logic to this question in a minute, but how does an LRT that takes up well over a third of any road share those roads with the largest tractor trailers in the country? How does that happen?
The LRT will not take any road space away from the road. This is well documented. There will be no loss of lanes, and so there's no loss of road capacity.
But drivers are being asked to U-turn on a regular basis, and tractor trailers will be asked to U-turn on a regular basis on corridors that are busier than some of the highways with tractor trailers. How does that happen? And this is with your plan.
This is these things will have to be worked out, but we're having. On the one hand, we're talking about
when will they have to? When?
Okay, please, no applause.
On the other hand, we're saying let's not, if there is any inconvenience to any driver anywhere, that's a bad thing. People are going to have to change. There are going to have to be some changes in behavior. These will not necessarily be bad in the long run, but we have to look at.
How does?
The traffic disruption has been significantly overemphasized.
Okay, can you let the councillor ask another question, please, because we only have 5 minutes.
How does the largest?
Okay, point of order. Just 1 sec. Yes, he did.
He was in the middle of answering a question. You interrupted.
No, he did answer. Okay, continue, Councillor Mamalidi.
How does the largest industrial pocket in the country, who runs tractor trailers through a corridor that we're proposing your LRT system, change their routines overnight? And you suggested that we work things out. When do we work them out? After the LRT is built?
No, I believe the TTC has plans, certainly during construction, to minimize impact during construction, and if there are, and they are working very diligently with the community to, is my understanding, to understand the impacts and to mitigate them as best as possible.
Well, this is where the Finch Avenue LRT comes into play. Last night there was a very important meeting held in my particular ward and Councillor Crisanti's ward, and the mandate from our community was, and it was unanimous the vote, was to stop the LRT because there hasn't been any consultation with respect to the business community and those tractor trailer drivers, and to do whatever we can to do a short-term, to implement a short-term bus lane for now with larger buses and work a long-term strategy for Subway along Finch Avenue. That's what the community wants. 2 out of the 3 communities along Finch Avenue want us to do that. Wouldn't it have made sense for you to recommend a 30 or a 40-year plan for this city to adopt subways over a 30 or 40-year plan so we knew which corridors would be adopted and it would give the business community like developers an opportunity to buy up land and pay those premiums to help pay for the subways over a 30 or 40-year plan instead of creating chaos like you've done with your report today in communities like mine?
Councillor Mammoliti, that was your last question.
Madam Speaker, may I respond to that?
Yes, of course.
First of all, with due respect, Finch Avenue is not before Council today. Our report did not address Finch Avenue, so I don't think it pertains. I would actually agree with you that significant consultation should be held with respect to any new proposal, and particularly with respect to Finch Avenue, I think considerable consultation should occur. I would also agree with you that what the city desperately needs is a 30 to 40-year transit investment plan. I would only disagree that one shouldn't start out by assuming that means subway everywhere and at all times and in all places. Subways simply aren't a rational investment in many situations. What we need is a hierarchy of services, of technologies and services matched to demand, matched to land use. I don't think our report creates chaos at all. What we're trying to do is provide some information for a rational decision on Sheppard Avenue that we hope, and we very explicitly say in our report, we hope is the start towards building that 30, 40-year plan. If we can get past Sheppard Avenue today, we can then start building for the future.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay, Councillor Mammoliti, you asked your last question. Now you have a point of privilege.
Point of privilege.
No, I'm not asking. He's not asking a question. That was the professor answering the question for a minute and a half, Councillor Cho.
More than that.
Okay. Councillor Mammoliti, you have a point of personal privilege?
My point of privilege is, while the doctor, everyone's claiming that he's an expert on transportation, is he an expert on procedural bylaws? Because he's given his opinion on what's in front of us and what isn't, number one. Two, with respect to what happened last night, the mandate that both Councillor Crisanti and myself, let me finish. Okay. And the reason it's important for us to bring Finch Avenue up here is because the mandate that's been given to us by our communities unanimously is that we proceed with the bus lanes and the buses short term, figure out a strategy long term, take the savings of the $1 billion along Finch Avenue and put it into this equation.
Okay, Councillor Mammoliti, that's it. No, Councillor Mammoliti, that's not a point of personal privilege. I'm sorry. Councillor Councillor Mammoliti. I'm not going to let you finish. No.
It's a financial matter. Madam Speaker, it's a financial matter. It's a financial matter.
No, it's not a point of privilege, Councillor Mammoliti.
Subway on Sheppard Avenue. If you're transferring the money from one to another, why are you ruling that out?
A point of personal privilege is to clarify only, but not to talk about the funding and the report that we have before us. Councillor Mammoliti.
The expert transportation person we've got up here suggests that my line of speaking is out of order. I'm saying to you that the mandate we have takes the money from Finch Avenue and puts it to Sheppard, and that alleviates the cost of Sheppard Avenue. Why is that out of order? Why is that out of order?
Okay, I'm not saying it's out of order. That's not a point of personal privilege. We're not in the middle of speaking. You asked, Councillor Mammoliti, you were asking questions and you got up on a point of personal privilege. Councillor DeGrand, point of order, Councillor Fletcher.
I think that it's a little confusing in here, and I know it is, but certain members of the panel are actually coming onto the floor of council. I'd like you to remind them, please, that their seats are at the back, not up with councillors, if you don't mind. I won't identify the people, but if you don't mind, it's happening.
Okay, I haven't seen it, Councillor Fletcher.
Well, Dr. Chong was up here speaking with Mr.
Okay, I'm looking on to my right. I didn't see anybody on my left. Okay.
Could you remind our panel that their role is not on the floor of council?
Okay, if I can remind members of the panel, you know where your seats are? Remain in your seats. Councillor DeGrande, questions.
Thank you. I would like to know if presently there are 9 intersections at capacity and the LRT takes up part of the road, what would be the effect 50, 100 years from now in terms of going with this mode of transportation down roadways which today are already at capacity?
Again, no loss of capacity will occur with the LRT. Roads will be widened, no lanes will be lost, so there's no capacity loss. I agree that there are capacity issues in that corridor. The only way to resolve that is to build transit that attracts riders away from that so that the growth we're expecting into the future can go on transit. The LRT won't accomplish that alone, but it's a good first step.
Well, okay. What are you proposing from the Don Mills station to Victoria Park? Above ground or below?
Well, the report is very clear on that. Under any scenario, it'll be underground to about Consumers Road. That's where the LRT would come up above ground for the rest of the way. Obviously, if a subway was built at least to Victoria Park, it'd be underground the whole way.
And it's underground because of what reason?
If the subway is being built, the subway is to be built underground, full stop. For the LRT, there's technical reasons why if coming out of Don Mills Station, it'll take a while to surface the LRT at an appropriate point.
Did you look at the operating costs of the LRT versus the subway?
We did not. The panel did not have a lot of information about operating costs. I know there have been TTIL has made some statements about that. Operating costs, I think, are very important. It has been alleged that LRT will be more expensive than subway. That needs to be determined. I think in the judgment of the panel, the differences would not be not be telling in terms of the determination of which is the better option to choose.
So how could you then say that you get better value for the dollar on transportation when operating costs, if you just look at the capital side of it, and you don't look at the operating cost side of it?
It would have been much better to have better information about operating costs to include in that, but that's not an easy determination to make, and under the assumption, it is an assumption that they are somewhat comparable, or that the time period it would take to amortize the differences is so long that it doesn't make much difference.
When we're talking about...
But still looking at the capital cost investment in terms of the impact is a valid thing to be doing. At the end of the day, you're trying to decide to spend $1 billion, $3 billion, whatever it is, on capital cost. One wants to make sure that that capital cost is well spent.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just don't agree that it's just capital. Cost is both capital and operating, and you've just indicated that you didn't take into account the operating side of it, and certainly not for the length of time of both modes of transportation. You also indicated in an earlier question that there was no funding plan. That's what you said to Councillor Matlow. Why was it then that Dr. Chong's funding plan was not included in the report when he provided one?
It was included, and not the Appendix B summarizes his presentation. The full presentation is available as part of the documents. The TTIL presentations and documents were fully considered by the panel. With due respect, there's many good pieces of information in that, but it's still not a funding plan that is complete or confirmed. And I think the portion that is in the report, the financial report, clearly demonstrates in clear terms the shortfall that currently exists in terms of committed funds and the opportunities to fill that shortfall.
Why wasn't the information on ridership not included, the Metrolinx data?
It's the ridership numbers presented in the Chong presentation, the TTIL presentation, are from a consulting firm hired by Metrolinx. My understanding is that those are not approved numbers necessarily. all the discussions within the panel where Metrolinx was there, they made it clear that that consultant was hired by them for TTIL. The numbers the panel used throughout were the city planning numbers.
Okay, that was your last question. Councillor Pasternak.
Speaker, and thank you for your work on the panel and your colleagues. I understand I'm looking at the title of your report, and it refers to studying transit on Sheppard Avenue East. I'm also looking at the directive of council from February the 8th, 2012, and Sheppard had always been envisioned from Downsview in the west to Scarborough Civic Centre in the east. I'm just wondering at what point you renamed your mandate.
Well, the panel agreed right from the beginning to focus on Sheppard Avenue East. We considered Sheppard Avenue West at various points in time in our discussion. The feeling was Sheppard Avenue West, no judgment is being made on Sheppard Avenue West by the panel, and we view that as a separable issue that could be discussed independently of Sheppard Avenue East, where the alternatives were clear and needed to be sorted out. Sheppard West is, in my view, and I think the panel's view, an independent decision.
One of the reasons we're here today is because many years ago we built a partial subway from Yonge and Sheppard to Don Mills Station. The problem is you can't run a transit system without complete seamless transit lines. Aren't we creating the exact same problem now by only studying and deciding on Sheppard East and leaving that big gap between Downsview Station and Yonge and Sheppard?
Again, the panel is not prejudging that at all. I mean, but we did not make a judgment on that. And so it may well be the case that it makes a lot of sense to build that Sheppard West. But that decision can and should, I think, stand on its own regardless of what we do Don Mills East on Sheppard. I don't think any decision made today would jeopardize making a decision on Sheppard West in the future.
Well, we're opening up a new subway line in Vaughan in 2015, and it'll create enormous north-south pressures from new commuters coming down. Could you argue that if your report had actually looked at the Downsview to Sheppard line, you would be running commuters across that line, the only really east-west seamless subway line above Bloor, and in fact your ridership numbers for Sheppard Avenue East would be much more enhanced and would create a better model for subway building?
Again, Sheppard West is a connection in the network that may well make sense, and certainly to create those sorts of flows may well be a useful thing to do. The panel did not consider it in detail, so I can't comment further on it. Thank you.
But what I'm trying to say are your numbers, without calculating increased ridership in our new subway line in 2015 and creating a continuous seamless subway line along Sheppard, wouldn't the numbers then justify subway from Don Mills to Scarborough Civic Centre?
There were some ridership numbers presented with the Sheppard West line included. Certainly they did lead to an increase in ridership. But again, I think the key question today is what to do with Sheppard Avenue East. And the fact is that the subway will dip off of Sheppard to Scarborough City Centre and doesn't provide the same connectivity along all of Sheppard East. I think one of the challenges here is we're looking at two different routes that will have different impacts, each in their own way, positive to greater or lesser extent. But either will feed and could be supportive of a Sheppard West line when that comes up for consideration.
Right. I'm not going to belabor the point, although I think I already have. Aren't we following the old traps of transit building, where we do We don't have a strategic long-term vision across the complete line, but a hodgepodge, which commuters, when they see the transferring, in other words, they'll have to get on the bus at Downsview, they'll have to get on the subway at Yonge and Sheppard, then they'll have to leave the subway and get on an LRT at Don Mills. I mean, I take transit all the time. There is no way I would put myself through that kind of transit grief. Do you think we're being fair to commuters?
I agree with you that what we need is to build a comprehensive transit network for the city, and certainly minimizing transfers where we can is an important thing. The panel was faced with a very narrow perspective to look at Sheppard, and again, one of our recommendations, a very strong recommendation, is that we have to start looking at that entire network. And starting to build a complete network that was well beyond the scope or capability of a panel that met for about a month.
Okay, that's your last question. All right, people in the corner there, Councillor Stintz, Councillor Matlow, can you please keep it down? It's very noisy. If you want to have a conversation, can you please take it to the back? It's hard to hear, especially when we're trying to listen to the questions and answers. Okay, our next question is Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Speaker. Professor Miller, a number of people listening to your responses have concluded that more than anything else, you're offering opinions rather...
I'm having great difficulty hearing you, Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, okay, let's put everybody... All right, we're going to put everything on hold for now because it's hard. It's hard to hear. Hello. Can I ask the media to keep it down, please? Councillor Carroll, members of council, please. Okay. Well, then, if it's Councillor Mamalidi, Councillor Carroll, you should be sitting in your seat then. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Kelly, do you want to start your question?
Would you please start my time over again?
Yes, I'll start it over again. Okay, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Professor Miller, can you hear me?
Can you hear Councillor Kelly?
Senora Miller. Professor, a number of the people who have been listening to your responses to the questions to date feel that you're offering opinions rather than hard data. And in your presentation last Friday, you said the argument should be decided on the data. Is that correct?
We looked at all the data we could and came to our opinions based on the available
Okay,
data.
so let's try and keep our relationship data-based then. Rapid transit is called rapid because it's fast. Of the two options, LRT and subways, which one is the faster option?
Well, I think I've answered that question several times.
Well, if you would.
Station to station, in terms of actual travel speeds, the subway is definitely faster.
And would it be fair to say?
And that's where it gets a bit murkier, closer stop spacings.
But would it be fair to say that the
times the LRT
would it be?
The LRT will typically be a bit slower door to door, probably than subway still.
Well, 75% of the riders of the TTC today are bused to the line. So we'll assume that is a given for both LRT and the subway. But you've concluded subways are faster. And would you conclude as a result of that faster speed that subways have a better opportunity of taking cars off the road and effectively meet the challenge, the economic challenge that traffic congestion poses today?
Bus access.
Yes or no, sir?
Okay, Mr. Miller, if you can just answer yes or no because it's hard.
The large part of northeastern Scarborough that will not be improved by the subway. So there seems to be an assumption that the subway is going to make trips faster for everybody. People will still, for a large number of people, they'll have to get to the subway first. So the travel time savings are less.
I'm not talking about
Professor
Miller.
Councillor Kelly, just one moment. I'll put your time. Councillor Thompson.
My mic, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, I realize this is an extremely important matter. Dr. Miller is trying to hear the questioning from questioners. We have a large audience of people that are here wanting to hear the questions, wanting to hear the response. I do think it's such an important issue for this city that we should be courteous to offer the opportunities of those who are asking questions to be able to ask those questions so Dr. Miller can respond and that we can all hear the questions. We're not able to do that at this point. And I think, Madam Speaker, I'd like to ask you to get order in the chamber so we can, in fact, hear this very important discussion and questions so as to help us to form our opinions. Please.
Okay, and Councillor Thompson, as you know, I've tried numerous times. The only thing I could suggest, okay, Councillor, is if we can have security go up and ask everyone at the top to be removed.
Including the media.
Including the media. Because it's too noisy. And there's too many people standing up there being interviewed, and it's way too noisy.
Professor Miller, I'm attempting
to... Okay, just one sec, Councillor Kelly. I've got your time on hold.
Thank you.
Okay, so if this does continue, then we're going to have to ask the media to leave. Okay, Councillor Kelly.
Professor Miller, I'm looking for answers that are very precise and hopefully short, because I only have 5 minutes within which to ask you these questions. My first question is, which is faster, LRT or subways? In a long, involved way, you agreed that subways are faster. My second question would be, of the two options, which of them has the higher operating costs over the life cycle of the technology, subways or LRTs? Just pick a side and say it.
In terms of the report, in terms of hard numbers, in terms of travel times, the city planning numbers say that in 2031, the subway will save 10 minutes of travel time on average for the people using it. And I believe it was 4 minutes for LRT. So the subway will save some time for some people using the system. Operating costs, I think, I have not seen sufficient data to make a judgment on that. In particular, we haven't heard from the TTC in a definitive way on that.
May I stop you there?
Previously of greenhouse gases. And certainly, again, the numbers in the report show that that more greenhouse gases will be removed with the subway option. The issue is how much money we are spending to accomplish that. We're taking a lower cost option versus a higher cost option. Comparing the benefits is
okay, Professor Miller, I would appreciate it if you can try to keep your answer short.
You'll wonder which one of us is the true politician.
Okay, if I can have members of the public, no applause, please. It's quiet for everyone.
Which of the two options by 2031 will be carrying the larger number of passengers?
Well, the report shows the subway will carry more passengers.
Considerably more or marginally more?
They can carry a considerable number more, but again, the question is how much money you're spending to accomplish that.
How much money is congestion costing the City of Toronto on an annual basis?
Sorry?
How much money is congestion? How much money is traffic congestion costing the City of Toronto on an annual basis?
It costs us billions. I believe the GTHA number is $6 billion a year in congestion. So again, we need to be building a network.
Thank you, Professor Miller. So that's $6 billion. That was the answer. Okay, a year. Councillor Thompson? Councillor Thompson, but I just want to make sure people heard that answer. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Through you to Professor Miller. Professor Miller, good morning. I wanted to ask if you're familiar with the following names, Edmund Burke and Thomas Taylor.
Sorry, what were the names?
Edmund Burke and Thomas Taylor. Bloor Street Viaduct, 1918. So they were the engineers and architect of the Bloor Street Viaduct, who actually, you're familiar with the area, are you?
He's having trouble. Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
You are familiar with the Bloor Viaduct?
Oh, yes, I very much am.
Right. And so you're familiar with the discussion that took place about 100 years ago? Very similar to what we're discussing here today. Limited number of people that would be living east of Bloor?
Yes.
Great. So can you tell me, Professor, are you familiar with the EA that was done in 1992 that recommended the build and development of subways for that area of Sheppard, what we're talking about today?
Yes.
And what, with respect to your perspective, has changed with respect to the recommendations from the EA in 1992 today, so as to now, obviously your committee that you have, you're the chair of, has now brought forward a recommendation. Sorry, can I just...
Okay, Professor, can you allow the councillor to ask you the question?
Okay. No, sorry.
Go ahead, Professor. Please, go ahead.
Okay. It's very difficult to know when a question ends. 20 years has passed. As we've seen, the projections for Scarborough City Centre and North York City Centre have not panned out over that time, and so questions about development of urban form have changed. But the big change is that LRT technology has evolved tremendously over this time as a viable option to subway. In the 80s and early 90s, it was simply assumed that subway was the only option for us. LRT now provides a very viable option to that. That's why we're having this debate today. Things have changed, and we have an alternative to consider.
Sure. Professor, on page 45 of your report, it talks about the panel feeling strongly that the city building requires that all three levels of government obviously work together, and the current opportunity to invest $8.4 billion. Obviously, your decision is predicated based on that. But it seems to me that there is a $50 billion requirement to actually build out fully the transit need for the city. If the funds were there, would we be having this discussion, or would your recommendations be different than we have here today? Because it seems...
$50 billion was available?
Yes.
I'm not sure it would be. I think the discussion would be somewhat different because we'd be looking at an entire network and have a better sense of the trade-offs involved. The concern is if we overinvest in this one small segment, and given limited funds, and certainly there's no guarantee of having the $50 billion, that we need to be prudent in every investment.
But you did, sir, you did speak when you referred to questions that were asked by Councillor Matlow. You talked about options and shortfall and that there is no funding plan. So would I be correct in surmising then that if we did have those things in place, and if a plan were to be submitted here today, that your perspective would be somewhat different than the recommendations that are in front of us today?
It would influence the recommendations. Whether it would change them, as I say, it would have been a different discussion. I think there is a serious question whether spending the money on the subway is the best thing to do with that money, even if we had it in hand today. But that's really for council to decide is how you want to spend that money.
Okay. What's the shelf life of an RT vehicle, an LRT vehicle, and a subway?
The LRT will obviously need refurbishing and track upgrades over time. How
much time?
The life of the facility will be is as long as you want it. We've been operating, I don't want to say the word, streetcars for a very, very long time in the city. The subway has a longer lifetime before it needs serious upgrades, but it also needs track replacement, signal replacement, and so forth. So these are both long-term investments.
Would you agree, Dr. Miller, that the people of Scarborough, through EAs that have taken place, the one I referenced in 1992, strongly recommending the build-out of Subway, have in fact had an expectation that subways were going to be built to improve transit in an area that's poorly served now?
Okay, that was your last question.
Yes, obviously this has been debated for a long time. Hopefully it will come to a conclusion today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Layton?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Dr. Miller, it's been said on several occasions that that the report didn't include numbers or didn't factor in vehicle speed. Could you tell me then what was factored in to the measure of level of service? The level of service score.
We looked at door-to-door time, so speed, it's not true that speed was not factored in, but the point is that speed is not the only component. So we looked at out-of-vehicle times as well as in-vehicle times, door-to-door.
So just to repeat that, it's not true that vehicle times weren't calculated in vehicle speeds.
It's absolutely not true.
In that number, which of the three options scored the best? Scored highest?
Could you direct me to a page?
My apologies. Page 41 of the report. There's a series of scores there. For level of service, which scored highest?
Option A was scored highest.
That being the LRT option.
Yes.
And that's for speed of for riders going from door to door, not factoring in lanes being reduced, but just the transit riders, those folks coming from communities along the Sheppard line, their time of travel based on the level of service would fare best under option A. Is that a safe assumption?
That was the consensus of the panel based on door-to-door times as well as the number of people who would be receiving improved service.
Based on the number of people receiving the service, who would receive more and better rapid transit service? Which option would serve the most people?
Option A, the LRT option, provides far greater coverage, and so more people will receive upgraded service.
How many more people than the other options?
It's in the report. I would have to find it. It's quite a large number.
So a significantly more citizens of Scarborough and Toronto and in neighborhoods along Sheppard will have rapid transit as a result of option A.
That's right.
What are current Sheppard? Do current Sheppard Subway ridership numbers meet the expectations?
No, they don't. I mean, the current Sheppard Subway totally underperforms in terms of what you would expect for capacity, given the capacity of the system.
So given that our current Sheppard Subway line is underperforming, and based on the numbers that we expect will come even with the result of increased development, are we to assume that new Sheppard Subway line will be functioning under capacity?
Yes, that's the best assumption we can make based on projections. And this is, a very fundamental point. The ridership projections simply do not justify the capacity investment.
And how does underperforming ridership numbers affect the operating cost?
Well, the cost per rider will be much higher. So, and this is something one has to look at is. The cost to deliver the service is going to be much higher on a per passenger basis if it's not meeting ridership capacity projections.
So based on our experience of the current Sheppard line and our predicted ridership for any future subway line, those lines would be underperforming and costing more to operate. Sorry, can you repeat your answer?
Sorry, I said that is correct.
Thank you very much. Then correct me if I'm wrong too. You calculated in life cycle costs and ridership levels to determine which option would be better, subways or LRTs. When you calculate life cycle costs, does that include Does that include operation costs?
Life cycle costs do include operating costs, or at least they should. The data before us did not always explicitly present operating maintenance costs.
So let's bring this all together. Based on expected ridership, the impact on operating cost, the capital cost invested in both, which is the better option, subways or LRTs?
Well, as our report indicates, the consensus of the panel is that the LRT is the best option in this corridor for implementation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor DeGiorgio, questions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Dr. Miller, just to provide some context for my questions, political expediency. When you have a directive from the provincial government that basically says we want this panel to look at using or at least investing $8.4 billion so that we have rapid transit provided to the maximum number of communities, does that not predetermine your recommendation as a panel?
Sorry, you broke up. Could you repeat the question? I'm very sorry.
My question is, if you have a directive from the province to invest $8.4 billion to provide rapid transit to the maximum number of people or communities, does that not predetermine what your ultimate recommendation will be as a panel?
Well, certainly the $8.4 billion that's on the table was a very serious consideration. Much of that is committed to other corridors. It's a very fixed problem we have. There's a certain amount of money available for Sheppard Avenue. This is not some sort of global optimization. We have this money on the table. The question is how best to spend
any residual amount.
Sheppard Avenue.
Any residual amount that's available to allocate to the Sheppard line, whether it be LRT or Subway, does that not predetermine whether you're going to recommend an LRT versus a Subway since you have minimum funds? Capital funds.
The panel tried to separate out the question of what is best versus what is expedient, but it does, one can't get around the fact that the money is available to build the LRT and a complete funding plan, confirmed funding plan for the subway is not yet there. So at a minimum, one is looking at delay, if you go with the subway, at delay in being able to deliver that till the funding sorted out.
Okay, let me move on.
I think the panel's recommendation for LRT is not just contingent on the funding situation.
Let me move on to the St. Clair project. It's been demonstrated that when we in fact look at above grade rapid transit, there are all sorts of complications that arise by virtue of the fact that you need to consult with the community, and inevitably the community ends up making requests that end up increasing the cost of above grade LRT. So is it fair to estimate, based on the St. Clair project, that in fact LRTs may come in at perhaps double the forecasted costs?
It's difficult for me to speculate on that, and we have no data on that. I think one could observe that. I think
another councillor here is saying 4 times the cost, but I think he's just playing around.
My understanding has already been going on with the community.
Keep it to yourself.
So hopefully this won't be a problem. Cost overruns in any project are always a possibility. It requires great management, subway or LRT.
Great management, right?
Now I understand, did you have anything to do with the St. Clair project? Just answer yes or no. Were you involved in the St. Clair project at all?
No, I was not.
Okay. From a planning point of view, do you have any evidence that in fact an LRT, as opposed to rapid bus service that exists maybe on, let's say, on Sheppard Avenue today, is likely to induce the kind of intensification that you believe will result from putting in an LRT?
There's a lot of evidence that rail has the potential to intensify relative to buses. Buses have very little, if any, impact on intensification. Whether it happens will depend upon city planning and the city being very proactive in promoting it and how the market responds to it. This is the toughest part, I think, in the whole question, both for the subway and the LRT, is how markets and community will respond to
I'm running out of time. I want to ask two more questions. Dedicated bus route, is that any better than or equivalent to an LRT? If we were to designate a lane just for buses, would that accomplish what the LRT might accomplish? Just yes or no, because I want to move on to my last question.
DRT can be a very viable solution. It was not something that the panel was charged to look with. It wasn't an option on the table. That's what all I can say. BRT in the right situation can work very well. I think Toronto needs to be looking at BRT in many of the
Okay, we have one more question. The problem is that the answers, okay.
I have one last question, which again goes back to the confidence that I put into the Metrolink's big move plan.
Okay, Councillor DeGiorgio, fast. Your time is up.
My question is that one of the lines that's proposed for an LRT is to go from Jane Street from Bloor to Vaughan. If anybody is familiar with Jane Street from Bloor to Vaughan, they know.
You're way over. You had to be fast. If you have a question, you have to be fast. Sorry, Councillor DeGiorgio.
If the question was about Jane Avenue, I mean, that was well beyond...
Jane Street.
I'm not in a position to comment on it.
Well, okay. All right, Councillor Crisanti. Councillor Crisanti? No, he's not here.
Right here.
Oh, okay, Councillor Crisanti. Okay, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Miller, I'd like to know why you were elected to speak on behalf of the panel, given that you are out of the country.
Okay, please, can I have quiet? Okay, just one second.
By the panel to speak, even though I was out of the country. I apologize to everyone for this. This trip was planned long ago. I have no choice to be here. I thought it was important for me to speak. If my input's not valuable, I'd be happy to go back to my conference.
No, not at all. I'm sure it is. The reason I ask, if I may.
Point of order. Okay, point of order, Councillor Coe. Just one sec.
I think it's worth mentioning, point of order. This meeting was originally scheduled for March 15th and then was changed after the fact to March 21st.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Well, the reason I ask, Doctor, is because there are other members of the panel that are not out of town, and this could go beyond 12 o'clock, and I was just wondering why some of the other members aren't available for the same type of questioning that we have here today in front of us. So let me carry on. Do you feel, Doctor, that the existing lines, subway lines that we have, Yonge Street and Bloor Street, for example, are good subway lines that serve the communities well?
Sorry, you broke up a little. I think you're asking me about Yonge, Bloor, Danforth, whether they're...
Exactly. I'm asking you about the existing subway lines that we have. Do they serve our communities well?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And do you feel that people in our city deserve to get from one end of the city to the other in the shortest possible time that we could get them there?
Yes, absolutely.
One thing, Doctor, I have to tell you, I have in my community, I'm in the furthest northwest end of the city, and every day people tell me and complain about the fact that we have a poor transit system, a system from the point of view of getting them to work in a safe and quick way. Do you feel that people in the north of the 401 deserve the same type of available transit system to them as is available downtown?
The people in the northern part of the city deserve an excellent transit system. Absolutely.
And do you feel that a subway, in fact, moves people faster than an LRT?
This question's been asked and answered several times.
I'd like to hear it again.
As one makes it out. Subways move faster over long distances. They will move people more quickly.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask if your report, how many people that live in the Scarborough area, did your report include any consultation with the community?
Sorry, could you ask the question again? How many people?
How many people in Scarborough did the panel consult with respect to your report?
We did not hold any public consultations. The time period was impossible for that. We had 3 members of the Scarborough community on the panel, I believe. Certainly 2. I think the 3rd is also from Scarborough.
Well, I would have thought that it would be important to have input from the community if we're going to have a report such as this. So no consultation whatsoever took place?
In the EA.
Okay, all right.
that's
Now,
fine.
hold on. Who's screaming?
I accept his answer. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Crisanti?
I'm glad you're all having a good time.
I know some
Are you?
members think it's a joke.
Are you
Yeah.
having a good time?
Doctor, you're aware of a statistical report that was given to me. About a year ago, I asked the TTC to provide me options for Finch Avenue. And I know we're talking about Sheppard, but Finch Avenue is important to communities along Finch Avenue as well. And what happens here today, I think, will impact Finch Avenue. Are you aware of a report from the TTC that speaks to an enhanced bus service along Finch Avenue that, in fact, moves people faster than an LRT?
I have not seen that report, and again, Finch Avenue wasn't part of our purview. We tried to review as many documents as we could, but that's not one report that I'm vaguely aware of, but I have not read that report.
Well, Doctor, there is a report that speaks very clearly to the fact that an enhanced bus service will move people along Finch Avenue at approximately 23 kilometers an hour faster than a $1 billion LRT at a fraction of the cost.
Your time is up. Okay. Councillor Perruzza.
Thank you very. My microphone?
It's on.
Oh, thank you very much, Speaker. My questions are to Mr. Byford of the TTC, and I just want to revisit, because we are being asked whether or not the Sheppard Subway should be extended beyond where it is now, and or not, or extended in some other form. And I just want to revisit the Sheppard Subway for a minute. How much did the current Sheppard Subway, the piece that runs from Yonge Street to Don Mills, cost to build?
Sorry, could you maybe speak a little louder? I couldn't really catch the question. I apologize.
The question is not to you. It's to TTC staff. Okay, TTC staff.
Councillor, I'm just checking on that figure. I would rather give you the accurate figure, so unless some of you know the actual cost of the 2002 cost of building the existing Sheppard Subway.
My understanding was $2.5 billion. Is that correct?
I'm just checking that figure, so the existing Sheppard Subway.
970 or 980.
980?
Yeah.
We believe it was $980 million, but I would rather give you an accurate figure.
980, so $1 billion.
There or thereabouts, that's correct.
Okay. So it's been in operation since 2002, correct?
That's correct.
And it has never performed to the numbers that it was anticipated to perform to, correct?
Well, the overall ridership is less than we had anticipated. That is correct.
it's my understanding that because the ridership is so low, that we subsidize it annually to the tune of about $10 million.
Again, I'm checking that fact. Certainly the ridership and therefore the revenue is less than what we have projected.
So, but if that number does pan out and it's $10 million and it's been in operation since 2002, so we've basically sunk another $100 million on top of that $1 billion we first paid for in building it out, right? More or less?
Obviously, we have expended every day that passes. We spend money on running the Sheppard Subway. Equally, we pull money in from revenue.
So given what you know today, some 15, 16, 17 years after you made the decision or Metro Council made the decision to build that Sheppard Subway, if you knew then what you know today, would you have still proceeded with the construction of the current Sheppard Subway?
Well, we would have taken Council's direction on whether or not to proceed with that construction.
But barring the political decision, from a technical perspective, knowing what you know today in terms of what it has delivered in terms of ridership, what it has delivered in terms of jobs, both for the North York Centre and beyond, given what it's cost you to subsidize to run, given all of those things, what would you have told the Metro Council of back then?
Well, I mean, I think it's easy to be wise with hindsight, but our recommendations are always based upon projected ridership and projected revenue. So certainly the line hasn't met the threshold that we would normally have applied to subway construction, but there would have been a number of other factors we'd have taken into consideration.
And all of the other information that you've looked at basically seems to suggest that even if you continued it from Don Mills to Scarborough Town Centre, it would still continue to underperform as a subway.
Well, the projected figures are less than the threshold that we would normally apply to a construction.
So you would be here telling us, if we asked for your advice, saying to us, don't do it because it doesn't meet our numbers, it doesn't meet our tests, do something else.
On the basis of the pure projection of numbers, it's true to say that wouldn't meet the projection that we would anticipate, but we would take other factors into consideration.
Perfect. Moving on, I just want to dispel a myth that was created a little earlier by one of the councillors. The suggestion has been made on Finch Avenue that the Emery Village BIA tankers serving the Emery Village BIA would be prohibited from making left turns into any driveway along the stretch of Finch that runs through the BIA from Highway 400 to Milvan Road. It's my understanding that at Arrow and Signet, Weston, Milvan, you have signalized intersections and full left turns would be permitted. Isn't that in fact the case?
Yes, my understanding is that at those signalized intersections you can still make a left turn.
So there is no driveway that you would be that a tanker would be prevented from entering and making a left, coming off the 400 and running through the entire Emery Village BIA.
Well, that's certainly the advice I've been given from my traffic expert.
So the impression that was created.
Overall, I wasn't paying attention, Councillor Perwood, so you're lucky you got an extra 5 seconds. Councillor Grimes. Okay, everyone quiet. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Professor Miller, are you there? Oh, there. I'm Councillor Mark Grimes from Ward 6 of Etobicoke Lakeshore. My ward's probably the furthest neighbourhood from what we're talking about here. And for a student from my neighbourhood to go to York University, I think it's a 2-hour timeline now. Or a student coming from Scarborough along the Sheppard line to come to Humber College in my ward, it'd be well over 2 hours. What would benefit them more, a subway or an LRT in your expert opinion?
Do you know that?
I don't hear the question. $65 million in cancellation.
Sorry, you broke up. I think the question is about going from York University to...
So a student in my ward that would leave from my ward to go up to York University takes 2 hours, or a student coming from Scarborough will come down to Humber College in my ward, down to Kipping and Lakeshore. What would benefit them more, an LRT or a subway?
There's some money that we spend on last year.
I believe more students will benefit from the LRT because the LRT is providing frequent, high-quality service to more people. Students would have to still get to Scarborough City Centre under the subway plan to connect to the subways and get out to York. So the coverage of the LRT will be greater, providing access for more students. I might also note, also eventually, I mean, one option to connect up to University of Toronto Scarborough might exist with the Scarborough LRT, although obviously the LRT doesn't provide that at the moment.
So just to clarify, a student coming from Scarborough that lives on the Sheppard line to get down to Etobicoke Lakeshore, they'd benefit more from an LRT than a subway. Is that what you said?
Sorry, you're down by the lakeshore?
Yeah, Lakeshore, Kipling.
Okay, well, depending on the buses, you might be better connecting to Scarborough City Centre in that case.
Okay. Professor Miller, you said you need to build a comparable transit network, an entire and complete network, stuff you said. Did your panel look at this? Entire and complete network for the city?
I mean, again, you're breaking up, unfortunately.
You said we need to build an entire and complete network. Has your panel looked at that for the city, an entire and complete network?
We do need to build an entire complete network. Clearly, both the subway and the LRT will contribute in different ways to that. The judgment of the panel is the LRT, in terms of the Scarborough component, will actually provide for more people a better starting point for that complete network.
My question was, did your panel look at that? The entire and complete network? Did your panel do that?
I can't hear you, I'm afraid.
Did your panel look at the entire and complete network for the city? Did your panel look at that?
Our panel could not possibly look at it.
Okay, so you did not. Okay. Do you believe?
Okay, just please answer yes or no because it's hard. Okay. Okay.
Professor Miller, has this council looked at the entire and complete network in your expert opinion for the city?
Not for some time, no, in my opinion.
Could you stop my time?
Okay. Councillor Fletcher.
Point of order. Should the questions not be on the item in front of us?
They are. It is.
And the expert panel was to look at Sheppard.
Yes.
And how is this part of that item, Speaker?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor
Madam
Fletcher.
Speaker.
Keeping questions on that.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher.
I
Thank
quoted
you.
Professor Miller. Said we need to
Councillor
build.
Grimes, stick to the item, please.
Professor Miller stated we need to build an entire and complete network. That was his word. So my question, has council done this? He said no. You said you looked at all the data we could. You had no info on operating costs. You stated that you had no information on the you had no data on that, on the operating costs.
We did not have complete information on operating costs.
Okay, and then under Councillor Layton's question, you said you had life cycle costs. What's the difference between life cycle cost and the operating costs?
There was various pieces of information. Some included life cycle costs, but not operating costs split out. There's been a lot of debate about LRT versus subway operating costs, the direct comparisons of those operating costs in a complete fashion with constant assumption, with consistent assumptions across them, were not available to us.
What other information, Dr. Miller, do you believe that you required that you did not have to make this decision?
Sorry, did you say what other?
Was there any other information that you felt that you needed that you did not have before you? Was there any other information that your panel required that you did not have provided to you, in your opinion?
I don't think we had. I think we were comfortable with the information we had available to us at the decision. One has to recognize the short time frame limitations placed on the panel. So we made use of all the available documents before us. New analysis could not be done.
And my last question.
That was your last question, sorry.